Okay, now we're going to be talking about psychophysiological factors. So, this one, we're going to be talking about our autonomic nervous system and how that impacts behavior. And I'll be abbreviating it ANS. So, that's our autonomic nervous system. It is responsible for regulating our organs, and without it, we would all be dead. So, how do we continue to breathe and stay alive while we sleep? Our autonomic nervous system. Again, always working, even though we're not aware of it. And more than just our breathing, there are a lot of things that our body does to keep everything working and running smoothly that we're not actually aware of or need to be aware of, thankfully. And this system is also responsible for our fight or flight response, which I'm guessing many of you have heard of before. So the idea is that when you are in an emergency situation, you are faced with a fight or flight decision, not necessarily that you're actually thinking it through all the way, but there are a lot of biological things that are happening that also occur when you're deciding whether or not you should fight whatever the situation is or run away. So I often think about this with regards to, like running away from a bear or something with a caveman, if we've got this example up here. So you're going to stand your ground, defend your position, attack, dig in, persevere, or are you going to run away, give up, retreat, discard, remove yourself, give up, move on. So here is our, this is our sympathetic nervous system. My thing cut off a little bit here, or our parasympathetic nervous system. I just wanted to show you this to kind of cue back to things that you may have learned a little while ago, maybe high school or some biology classes now. But there are a lot of things that happen with our fight or flight response with our sympathetic nervous system. So let's see, we've got pupils dilating. We're not salivating as much. Our airways are relaxed. Our blood vessels are constricted. Our heart rate accelerates, and so on and so forth, all across our system here. And then once we are done and we're able to rest again, our pupils go back to normal, our salivation turns back on, our airways are constricted again, our heart rate slows down, and so on and so forth. The emotions that we are experiencing influence our autonomic nervous system. So our emotions like I'm afraid of this tiger, somehow the bars aren't there, I'm in trouble, are gonna activate that system, versus if we are playing with this little cat and we don't have any fear of cats, then we're gonna be fine and not have that kind of response. And there's a lot of different ways that we can measure this kind of activity. So heart rate, skin conductance, which is sweating. If you've ever, well, I've had a polygraph before, and they put a measure on your finger that measures very small amounts of sweating or your galvanic skin response. So there's ways that devices measure those things, as well as in addition to heart rate and breathing and things like that, respiration. Okay, so let's apply this to crime now. Here we have the arousal theory of crime, and basically states that chronic offenders have low autonomic arousal. So they're lower than your average person in their arousal. So lower heart rate, lower skin conductance, lower breathing rate, etc., etc. And so the idea here is that they do these different crimes and types of things to get a rise in that feeling or perhaps rush of the excitement of doing the crime, or the potential fear of getting caught and punished, but that kind of rush feeling. They do it because their systems are lower in the first place, if that makes sense. So they are seeking out this type of excitement and stimulation that can also be thought of as jumping out of an airplane, with the parachute, of course, in addition to types of crimes and things, to get that rush because their systems are a lot lower than the average person. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more about our amygdala. So as we can see here, this is in a drawing and where our amygdala is in our brain, and it's responsible for regulating our emotional responses like fear. It plays a big role in fear. Oh, there we go. There's the amygdala. Okay, so go ahead and watch video 2. It's linked on our Canvas page. Okay, now we're back talking about temperament. Temperament is your natural mood disposition, and it's influenced by a few different things, including our genetics and biology. And not unlike our attachment, this is something that people study in infancy, and it then also continues on throughout life. So it's interesting to think our natural mood disposition is seen as early as infancy, but when we're younger, and then it continues on throughout our lives, whatever our temperament is. So it is determined largely by genetics and biology, but it's also influenced by our environment. So we not only have genetics and biology, but things like family, parenting style, and social environment also influence our temperament. So again, we've got a mix of that nature and nurture, if you've heard of that before, where nature is our biology and nurture is our environment that shape all of us. And just like with all the other chapters, chapter 2 and this one, and then the next one, chapter 4, we have these are risk factors for antisocial and criminal behavior, but again, not a direct cause. So we'll look at the type of temperament or types of temperaments that increase or decrease the probability of antisocial behavior. So this is taken from your book talking about the 3 different temperament styles. So we're going to start with the easy child and talk about these 5 different behavioral characteristics. Okay, so rhythmicity, I had to look that up myself, is the level of predictability in your biological functions. So how often are you going number 2, for example? Is it pretty regular or irregular? Things like that. Moods are pretty self-explanatory. Are you more likely to have a happy or positive mood or an unhappy or negative demeanor? Approach to others is basically how the child responds to new people. So let's imagine you're holding a 9-month-old and the mother passes, or I guess I'm changing my perspective here. Your friend is with you who has a 9-month-old baby and she passes the baby to you. How is this child responding to you when you've never met the child before? Are they generally happy and able to be held by you and not have any issues? Or does, as soon as you get the child passed to you, they start screaming and not happy that they're with you? So for the easy child, they're very able to be held and approached by others and not get upset about it. Next is adaptability. So how quickly or slowly is the child adjusting to any changes that are occurring? And lastly is their intensity to, their intensity in response to certain situations. So Are we screaming our head off, or are we generally kind of mellow when we're getting these new responses or new situations, or some kind of response that's needed? So for an easy child, we have regular biological functions, a positive mood, highly adaptable to others, so they're not screaming when you're being passed a child that you don't know. They're quickly and rapidly able to adjust to new situations, and they have low intensity responses. So they're generally kind of mellow and they're not screaming their heads off. Next, we have the difficult child. So the difficult child is irregular in their biological functions, has a negative mood, has a low adaptability, or sorry, a low approach to others. So they're not going to be very happy to being passed off to somebody new. They're not able to just kind of go with the flow in that response. They're slow to adapt to changes, and they have high intensity levels. So let's say like screaming your head off when passed to somebody new. Lastly, we have our slow to warm up child. So regular biological functions, negative mood, low approach to others, slow adaptable, and a low intensity. So we do have that similar low intensity to the easy child as well. Okay, so what does this all mean? Not surprisingly, our difficult temperament is the one that is going to be most associated with antisocial behavior. So this is an example of our intensity. If you go back to the previous slide, our intensity to situations, and maybe are not able to adapt to new situations there. Okay, so temperament is explosive, and we are lacking self-control. Because of this, they're more likely to become violent when they're getting into their adolescence or teen years. We see a basically same type of behaviors from preschoolers with difficult temperaments, and they have higher issues with antisocial problems and risk-taking by age 15. So we do see long-term research showing these temperament issues when they're younger having similar type problems in a broad sense when they're older.